Welcome back, Fantasy Fiction Fanatics. It's great to see you again, and I hope you're doing well. Today is another book review, and today's book is going to be A Sea of Pearls and Leaves by Rosalyn Briar. So this book is about the Princess of Norella Isle. Her name is Ingrid, and she is trying to escape having to marry a man because she already has a girlfriend. Her name is Lolura, and she does not want to have to marry this man. She wants to keep just dating her girlfriend. And her girlfriend devised this whole list of things that have to go into her marriage contract that are required in order for her to get married in the hopes of scaring off all these suitors. Unfortunately, it didn't scare off any of the suitors, and so the king decides to hold a tournament or all these different games in order to make sure that each of the suitors fit the requirements, and at the end she would choose from whoever was left. So they're having these challenges, and during these challenges their local priestesses are turning up dead or missing, and so Ingrid and Lolura are trying to deal with and figure out the priestess situation while also trying to fend off Ingrid's suitors. So, overall, what did I like about this book? Unfortunately, my list of things I liked about this book is very short. The only thing that really truly stands out that I liked was that it was very short, easy to read book. It is just very simple, plain book to read. So that is the highlight for me, at least, of this book. Unfortunately, there is quite a bit that I didn't really care for in this book. The characters, in my opinion, are super shallow and one-dimensional. Each of the characters has one particular thing that's their quirk or their focus of who they are, and it's just used throughout the entire book. It just keeps getting played over and over again, and it's that's the only real thing about that character that's worth mentioning, I guess. And I just really did not like how so superficial that they were. It was very hard to connect to them as characters and as people who I cared about because of it. So I feel in general, every single character is very one-dimensional and shallow, which, as you guys have known, if you've watched me for a while, characters is a really big thing for me. So that was a no-go for me on the characters. The actual overall plot, I think, is kind of weak. I like the concept, but I feel the actual execution of the concept just didn't really work out for me. It's a little bit all over the place, and I feel in general the weak plot also led to having weak relationship developments. So the relationship between Lolura and Ingrid was supposed to already be established before the story started, and I just feel they didn't really, the story didn't really develop it much for us to really understand their connection. There is a connection a little bit between Ingrid and one of the suitors. I think his name is Soren, if I remember correctly. And they're supposed to be developing a connection, and I don't feel that really worked out well for me. It was kind of very quickly that she was developing any connection with him. There was also a connection between Lolura and Soren based on, being the girlfriend and the suitor. And I feel that relationship is the weakest one that's developed. It's really just, I don't really understand how it gets from point A to point B at all. So I feel the weak plot and the way it was structured didn't give enough time to develop those relationships correctly. And so that was really weak for me. It is pretty sexualized in the fact that I feel especially at the beginning, a lot of the events happen in order to try and get Lolura and Ingrid into sexual situations, or to mention Ingrid's sexual preferences. And I am all for romance and having sexual encounters in my stories, that's fine. but I just felt like the whole purpose of everything was just to have a sexual encounter, and that's not great for me. I prefer it to be more natural to the setting or to the events or whatever, and for the situations, sexual situations, to enhance the events, not the events setting up for the sexual situations, if that makes sense. So to me, those seemed really superficial as well. And last but not least, I wasn't overly excited by the fantasy elements. They were in there, and some of them were interesting as like their own concept. I just, after everything else was unexciting, the fantasy elements were not wow enough to raise the bar for me on everything else. So it just kind of was, everything was a little bit underwhelming. So unfortunately, I know it's not quite a great raving review for this book, and I really was hoping to like it, but unfortunately, I don't recommend this book. I don't think that many people will really enjoy it. I do think it has, the LGBTQ plus themes, which I do really appreciate that is in there, and I think they did a good job with that. So I guess that is another thing that I should put under that I liked about it. But so if you're into those kind of themes and you're into that, maybe you might want to read the synopsis and just maybe suss out maybe one chapter. But in general, I just don't think that there's much to hold on to for this book. I don't think that younger audiences would be appropriate for this one either, in the fact that it is so sexualized. So I just think in general this is one that you can pass on for another book. But if you have read it or you end up reading it and you do like it, please let me know what you liked about it and how you felt about it. I'd love to compare notes and see what you think. If you have read it and you didn't like it, I'd also love to know that too and see if you felt the same way. Just love to have a discussion about this book if you have read it or plan to read it. If you want more details about what I think about it, you can also check out my blog post. The link for that will be down below, what I have written for this review. And other than that, I guess that is it for me today. I'll go ahead and talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.